Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, presented by Cinematic Visions, and it's another edition of Danny and Tim's Music Scene. I've been on vacation and got refreshed. I'm always paying attention to music, and I always enjoy this particular podcast very much because I get to talk to Tim, for one thing, but secondly, in preparation for it, I always kind of kick around and look for things to talk about if I don't have anything front and center on my mind, and we have all kinds of record type things to talk about, including first favorite sort of records. There have been new releases by artists. Maybe some have been inspired, maybe some haven't. We've got a couple of really fabulous album anniversaries that Tim wants to touch on, and that's always cool as well. There's an artist that I like quite a bit who's been quite famous in England for about a decade now, and not so much in America, so I'll unveil who that is and talk about that particular phenomenon, which actually has worked both ways through the years in the music industry. I soon will be watching a documentary called Ennio the Maestro about Ennio Morricone, the famous film composer and composer in general, wrote a lot of hit songs, but is mostly known for his movie soundtracks. And my wife watched it, and she is demanding that I watch this just pay on to a person who loved music so much, and she's a gigantic fan of Cinema Paradiso, the film, and he did the music for that, among many, many, many other things. Some discoveries on YouTube that were kind of surprising. A little baseball-connected note that I like. Tim's always happy to talk about Paul Simon and The Guardian sleeve notes, which I get to enjoy every Friday and would be a great source for you. That great British newspaper has a wonderful music section, and he was profiled recently, so I can recommend that highly. All those things in the mix and maybe a little more coming up next on Danny and Tim's Music Scene. It's part of Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, presented by Cinematic Visions.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Visions' goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300.
Hey Kansas City, Joe Spiker, Easton Roofing here. It's been a crazy weather year in Kansas City. You hear lots of ads for taking care of your storm damage. But if you didn't have storm damage, we're still here to help. If somebody talked you into filing a claim that was denied by your insurance, we're also here to help. Oftentimes, repairs are still needed. If you'd like a second opinion, give us a call. The consultation is always free and suggestions are built on integrity. Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
If you'd like to join these and other fine sponsors and market your business to Kansas City's #1 variety podcast, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to working with you. Welcome back, and let's start off doing some records. And why don't we start off with Tim's inspiration? And I always love when he does this. His Facebook page is often populated with the cover of an album that is enjoying an anniversary and is great to look back on. And you got a couple of those, Tim.
So yeah, the first is the Talking Heads' fourth record, which is called Remain in Lights. And it celebrated its 40-something anniversary on Tuesday. It came out in 1980, I believe, so 44. And it, for me, in retrospect, it sort of defined the beginning of David Byrne's kind of departure from the band. He started to go into African music, world music. It's very, there's some darkness to it, but it's very very, very funky, dancey, but there's a bleakness to it. And so, so yeah, it's I don't know if it's my favorite record of theirs, but I think it's their best, because, and we'll talk about this in a minute for a couple of reasons, but it's him always wanting to shift, incorporate new music, new styles, new sounds into his music, and he just kind of became an alchemist and a mad scientist with music influences. So Once in a Lifetime is the big song off that right. Everyone knows. It's a great song. It's in the concert movie, but Cross-Eyed and Painless is the song that I could play on a loop 12 times in a row when I'm walking. It's just like it's just this just absolutely groovy. It's almost hard not to like prance down the street when I'm walking, because it's just, I love it, and it's got elements of their previous records, but it's different. So I think it was an elemental record of theirs. He, like I say, that he would eventually decide, I'm my own guy, and I don't want to work in committee anymore. And for me, that's what I see was the beginning of that choice for him.
And the next one is, of course, we talked about Paul Simon in the intro. Somebody else you talk about anytime you want is REM.
Yeah, so their record Automatic for the People came out in 1992. The anniversary was, I think, October 5th. But what I wanted to talk to this about is relative to, like, Coldplay put out a new record. Chris Martin said, this is going to be our last record. It's our 10th record. And he applied some weird formula. Like, that's what, how many records somebody made. So you should just not make more than 10. And my thought was, after listening to some of it, was like, no, you should not make more than you need to make. And didn't need to make this one. Like, and I think they've, since those first two records, I think if you're going to make a list of the band's first two records and how great they were and how durable they are, enduring they are, I would put them in the top 25 or 30 out of a lot of records. I just think they're both really good. They evolved from 1 to 2 really well. But after that, I don't know, he went on this, he thought he was, I don't know, Radiohead or Brian Eno or something. There's taking a lot of chances, and instead of just sticking to really good British rock, pop melodies that were compared to U2 and Radiohead, early Radiohead, which I didn't really hear, but it's a fair comparison. And since then, they've just meandered so much. They're hard to follow. And then this is just, so back to REM, and after 92, they put out Automatic for the People, which was produced by John Paul Jones. It's very orchestral. It's very subdued. It's not who they were, but like I was saying, it's definitely their songwriting. It's their melodies. It's their chord progressions. You recognize their voice, Michael Stipe's voice. So, like I said, they stayed in their lane, but they widened the lane, and the lane took some weird turns, but they were easily to navigate. And it's just like, it's their best record by far. I would say that it's not my favorite because I think there's a difference between the two. But
that's interesting.
But it's definitely, I compared it online to when I was having a discussion about it to what the Zombies did with Odyssey and Oracle, how they went from being this sort of garage band to, and like I said, I don't think those records sound alike, but I think that was the jump that REM made. It wasn't as far of it as a jump, but man, they landed the plane beautifully. I adore that record. But it just didn't surprise me like Murmur did. So, or the first. So when I talk about favorites, that was when the early records were when the infatuation set in. This was just like, it just reaffirmed my affection for them.
And, of course, that is an iconic record, and I thought of this the other day while I was listening to my playlist while cleaning up after grilling, and Sunshine of Your Love came on by Cream, and it's the first hard rock song that I liked, and it was way harder rock than anything I had liked before. It was more like 60s pop and things like that. Even the Beatles at the time sounded kind of poppy. And that my first album purchase with my own money was Live Cream Volume 2 because Sunshine of Your Love was on that, and there's a great long version of it. And it led me to think, you know what? I'm going to be talking to Tim in our music podcast, so I'll ask you those two questions. Maybe your first hard rock song that you remember liking, and maybe when the first time you reached into your own wallet with grass cutting or newspaper route money and bought a record.
The first album I paid for with my money was Rod Stewart's Every Picture Tells a Story, which has Maggie May on it.
That's a good one.
It's one of my favorite albums of all time. It's a little weird sidebar. In the intro to Maggie May, there's that mandolin solo, and the record I bought had a skip in it just as the solo ended, and it jumps into the song. But the place I bought it, this little pharmacy in a little town, it would have taken them weeks to get me a new one. So I just lived with it and listened to that. And every time I hear that song now, I expect to hear that little jump from Out of Time, but it's so I just wore it out. Anyway, that was the first one I bought. And then, that's an interesting question. Like, I heard Helter Skelter by the Beatles. That was pretty hard.
Yeah, that's
the Beatles
true.
did some stuff. But they were the Beatles, and it came in a different context. So, there's some Thin Lizzy stuff that I like.
Right.
Bachman Turner Overdrive was huge. That was sort of pop, hard rock.
There you go.
But I think, it depends on your definition of that. But when I got to college, and I started listening to progressive rock and just a lot of stuff I'd never listened to. So it's probably something in there. But, my one regret is I didn't really embrace Led Zeppelin until
me neither.
I was married with children, and now I love them. Like,
except for Stairway to Heaven, I don't think I ever really explored them very much either. But I was only 10 when Sunshine of Your Love came out, and I was kind of taken aback that I even liked my parents certainly couldn't understand why I was listening to this. But anyway, that probably made it even make me like it even more. So that's probably the case as well. Well, an artist who has a new record coming out, who I really like, who has had his ups and downs since his sort of meteoric rise to British fame, is Jake Bugg. That's not his real name, but he sort of plays rockabilly music and has gone through some derivations. But when he was in 2012, his self-titled first album came out. He won a contest in Eurovision or something like that for the BBC, and got to headline in Glastonbury. Anyway, he was only 17 years old, and this record, his first record, went to number one. In fact, it debuted at number one. And he's, very famous in England, although he has had some critical not successes since that one. Everybody loved that record, both critically and so forth. And he's only toured very sporadically in the United States. My wife and I are big fans, and we've always wanted to see him. Well, he is starting a tour tonight in New York City, but apparently he's just trying to dip his toe and maybe get some big publicity in the United States, because he's only playing New York, Chicago, L.A., and Nashville before he goes into like 60 dates all around Europe and the biggest cities and markets there. And this kind of phenomenon has actually happened on many occasions both ways, like bands that have been super popular in their homeland of England, but not in the United States. And some American bands have been, like the Pretenders, for instance, were famous first in England before the United States. I always thought the Pretenders were British, as a matter of fact, for a while. And I love Jake Bugg, and he's unique to me. One of the things that I like about him is that's different is that most British musicians, bands, whatever, when they sing, they don't really sound that British. They almost sound American from the Beatles on. And Jake Bugg sounds really British. He's got a very thick accent, and I enjoy him. But that's it. I like him. I'm glad he's maybe starting to, perhaps we'll get to see him in America. And he's only 30 years old now, but a veteran. And that phenomenon's interesting.
Yeah, there's a few things at play here. It's the not only like the guys who start really young, like Johnny Lang, Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Kenny Wayne Shepherd opened for the Stones when I saw them in 1998. So he was still an 18 or 19, or maybe it was John. It was one of the two. I'm sorry I confused them, but it's easy to do. And but Brody Buster was a kid who came out of Kansas City who's still doing it now as a father, but